In the winter of 1972, four young Scots were on the verge of collapse. They had formed a band, recorded albums, gone on tour. They had done everything they were supposed to do to make it big. But success never came. They had no hit songs, no sales, no money, and even their manager was starting to give up. Everything pointed to their dream ending in the silence of failure. Then, the unthinkable happened. A sad ballad, a song they didn't even want in their set list, became their salvation. It was a borrowed song, a B-side at best, with zero expectations. Yet that melody, filled with pain and longing, lifted them to the top of the rock world. This is the story of how Nazareth rose from obscurity to become legends, how fate hides in the most unexpected places, and how one song can change everything. Stick around, because what's coming next is a story that, just like their music, hits straight to the heart. In the 1960s, while the world pulsed to the rhythm of the British rock explosion, in the quiet Scottish town of Dunfermline, a young student named Pete Agnew made a decision that would unknowingly spark the beginning of a legend. He wasn't dreaming of sold-out arenas or international fame. What he wanted was something simpler and more sincere, to play music with his friends and leave a lasting memory in their local community. That's how the Shadets was born, a humble band formed in 1961. Their style was straightforward, covering the hits of the day, playing at local dances, school events, and on small-town stages. They became known for their perfectly coordinated yellow suits, a visual signature that made them stand out, at least on the surface. But behind the fun, there was hard work, a revolving door of band members, and an ambition that hadn't yet found its shape. For years, they remained in that local scene. Their sound wasn't groundbreaking, but their dedication was unshakable. Everything pointed to their story ending there, like so many other small-town bands. But by the mid-60s, something shifted. New members arrived, and they brought more than just talent. They brought vision. A different spark ignited. Among them was a young man named Dan McCafferty, who, at first, wasn't even a musician. He was the roadie, the guy in charge of the gear. One night, out of necessity, he stepped onto the stage, and the band's direction changed forever. That was the moment Nazareth's journey began to take shape, a path that still held no promises of fame, but one that, from then on, had no way back.
Out in the morning dew today.
In 1965, while the Shadets were still just a cover band with modest aspirations, fate came knocking in the most unexpected way. A young man named Dan McCafferty, known for his gravelly, powerful voice, had joined the team, not as a performer, but as the guy who hauled gear, set up the stage, and made sure everything was in place before each show. That was it, nothing more. Until one night, the lead singer quit just moments before going on stage. With no time to find a replacement, someone remembered how Dan would sing during van rides. No rehearsal, no prep. He walked onto that stage and changed everything. His raw, emotional voice mesmerized the crowd. From that moment on, Dan became the band's new lead singer. 2 years later, Daryl Sweet joined the group, an energetic drummer with a background in pipe bands. And in 1968, the arrival of guitarist Manny Charlton marked a real turning point. He didn't just bring musical skill, he brought a mindset shift. It was time to stop playing other people's music and start creating their own. The timing couldn't have been better. Bands like Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, and Spooky Tooth were reshaping rock with grittier, heavier, and more liberated sounds. Inspired by that creative wave, the Shadets realized that if they wanted to leave a mark, they needed a new identity. One night in a local bar, while debating possible names for this fresh start, the weight by the band came on. The first line of the song mentioned a place, Nazareth. The name struck a chord. It was short, powerful, mystical, and linked directly to their influences. That night, Nazareth was born, but a new name wasn't enough. Now, they had to prove they deserved it. The real challenge was only just beginning. With a new name and a solid lineup, Nazareth was ready to make its mark. But the road to success was far from immediate. In 1971, they released their self-titled debut album under Pegasus Records. It featured original tracks like Dear John and Country Girl, along with a powerful cover of Morning Dew. While the album gained some traction in Germany, it went largely unnoticed in the UK. The following year, they released Exercises, a more acoustic and introspective album with songs like 1692, Glencoe Massacre, and an early version of Woke Up This Morning. Though well-crafted, it failed to capture the attention of critics or audiences. Yet despite the lack of recognition, the band never stopped pushing forward. They toured relentlessly, opened for acts like Rory Gallagher and Atomic Rooster, and endured tough moments, including being booed in Nuremberg before playing a single note. But during that quiet grind, they did something that would unknowingly change their fate. They recommended a young band called Deep Purple to some Scottish promoters. That generous gesture wasn't forgotten. Years later, after achieving global fame, Deep Purple invited Nazareth to open for them across Europe and America. And that's when everything began to shift. Ritchie Blackmore was captivated by Dan McCafferty's gritty voice, and Roger Glover, Deep Purple's bassist, offered to produce Nazareth's next album. Their first test? A country song turned hard rock, Broken Down Angel. The result was so compelling that their manager, Bill Faley, decided to back a full new album. That album was Razamanas, released in 1973, with Glover at the production helm. Songs like Bad Bad Boy, Razamanas, and Broken Down Angel catapulted Nazareth into the UK top 10, finally earning them the recognition they had fought so hard for. Nazareth was no longer a promise. They were a reality, and the best was still to come.
Love hurts.
Following the breakthrough of Razamanas, Nazareth didn't lose momentum. In just 15 months, they released 3 more albums: Loud and Proud, which featured their explosive cover of This Flight Tonight, and Rampant, recorded in Montreux with the help of legendary Deep Purple keyboardist John Lord. The band had finally found their sound, their audience, and their place in the hard rock scene. But in 1975, they released the album that would change their fate forever, Hair of the Dog. Produced by guitarist Manny Charlton and recorded in just 9 days, the album solidified their identity: raw guitars, rebellious attitude, and blunt lyrics. The title track, Hair of the Dog, became a radio anthem across the US. However, the real global phenomenon wasn't that song. It was one no one saw coming: Love Hurts, a melancholic ballad, initially treated as a secondary track and not even an original. First recorded by the Everly Brothers in 1960, but Nazareth gave it a new soul. Dan McCafferty's heartbreaking vocals and a solo dripping with emotion turned the song into something unforgettable. Against all odds, Love Hurts broke into the top 10 in the US, Canada, Norway, and several other countries. The album sold over 2 million copies. Many consider it the first true power ballad in rock history, a Plan B track that ended up being the reason millions discovered the name Nazareth. But the summit came at a cost. In 1976, their manager and greatest ally, Bill Fahily, died in a tragic plane crash. The band, by sheer instinct, had decided not to board that flight, a decision that saved their lives, but couldn't save the man who had helped bring them to the top. Success had a price, and Nazareth was beginning to pay it. After the overwhelming success of Hair of the Dog and Love Hurts, Nazareth pressed forward with determination. Throughout the rest of the 70s, they released albums like Close Enough for Rock and Roll, Playing the Game, and Expect No Mercy, records that showed a band still active and versatile, but no longer able to replicate the global impact of their biggest hits. The decade also brought challenges. In 1976, still reeling from the loss of their manager, the band faced a rapidly shifting music landscape. In 1978, they found new momentum with the arrival of guitarist Zal Clemenson, whose more aggressive style helped shape No Mean City, one of the heaviest albums in their catalog. Songs like May the Sunshine and Star found modest success in the UK, but the tides were clearly turning. The 1980s were not easy. Nazareth tried to adapt with albums like Malice in Wonderland and Cinema, efforts that, while sincere, failed to connect with a new generation of listeners. While the UK charts began to ignore them, Nazareth found a second life in Eastern Europe, becoming the first Western rock band to bring full-scale productions to countries like Poland and Russia. On those stages, they were still giants. But change was inevitable. Manny Charlton's departure in 1989 marked the end of an era. The following years saw the band struggling to reinvent themselves. Albums like No Jive, Move Me, and Boogaloo couldn't reignite the spark of the past. Then came a crushing blow, the death of drummer Daryl Sweet in 1999. His son, Lee Agnew, stepped in, but the original spirit of Nazareth was beginning to fade. In 2013, Dan McCafferty, the unmistakable voice of the band, retired due to health issues. He passed away in 2022, just months after Manny Charlton. Today, the band continues with a new lineup, but for many, Nazareth is no longer a band. It's a memory that lives on in worn-out vinyl, in dusty radios, and in the hearts of those still moved by the aching beauty of Love Hurts. Nazareth was more than a rock band. They were the voice of a generation that dared to dream big from small places. Their story isn't just about a group that found success through an unexpected ballad. It's about men who endured the blows of time, trends, and tragedy, leaving behind an unforgettable imprint on the memory of rock. Even if their name no longer tops the charts, their legacy lives on in every aching note of Love Hurts, in every rescued vinyl from a dusty shelf, and in the heart of every fan who still keeps their music alive. Because in the end, legends don't die, they just change shape. Now we want to hear from you. What's your memory of Nazareth? Do you think the band would have been just as iconic without Love Hurts? Tell us in the comments. Every story matters, and we love hearing how music connects across generations. If you enjoyed this video, drop a like and leave a comment. It really helps YouTube recommend it to more people, so we can keep sharing stories like this one.